Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is December 4th, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. Now, today we've got a great topic about how we're going to talking about like searching and what the future of that looks like. If I can get off my stupid screen here. Here we go. Okay. There it goes. That was different than last time. Now it's on overlay. I had it on the background earlier, so it actually works better. See, we learned something new there. Welcome, everybody. We have almost, we have some of the crew here today. We got Jimmy, Beth, Andy, Robert. Welcome. I'm Brian. Aaron, I think we just heard was going to be out all this week because he's got some other things going on and webinars and such. But I did hear we may see the Aaron avatar at some point, Hey Jen avatar, come into future shows. So he was just saying, hey, what do you think about that? And I said, I haven't yet, but I'll say absolutely. So we may see some avatar Aaron's later on this week. And we'll see where Carl is as well. So anyway, it's Monday. That's the main thing. Focus. Today is all about talking about search. Now, we've talked about search before in this show, but we wanted to bring it back because you know, what I'm seeing, I know in my personal life is I mentioned to you guys, I think off air one time, or maybe it was on one of the shows that I hadn't really noticed. It was just happening slowly, but that Google's, SGE, meaning the stuff that just shows up at the top of the page a lot of times, if you're using their labs experiment part of Google, which you can opt into, then those top search results are where I'm starting to spend more of my time. Now, that could be just because it's literally the thing they're giving me first at the top of the screen. But I do find more and more than I would have said 2 or 3 months ago that it's answering my questions more efficiently. And I'm not scrolling down to web pages, which changes the game a bit. So, is Google purposely imploding their whole idea of SEO and everything else that's going on as far as search? Is there more to it? Then there's obviously tools like Perplexity. Now, real quick on that, just so for our audience, we're going to do a tool review. It's not really a tool, but we're going to do a deep dive review of Perplexity 1 week from Friday. So almost 2 weeks from now. That's so that all of us, Andy, I know you're already using it, so I want to get your insights on it, and maybe some other people are too, but that's so that our whole crew can go use it on our own and then come back with 7, hopefully if all of us are here, 7 unique perspectives on how we like that tool, whether we think it's valuable, whether not, all that good stuff. So that's coming up, but Perplexity is definitely part of the conversation today because, I don't know, Andy, do you want to kind of kick it off there, how you're maybe using it, and maybe what were you using before Perplexity? Was it Google? Do you feel like there's been a shift for you? Maybe that's a great place to kick this off.
Sure. To reserve something for the actual show on Perplexity, I won't go deep into Perplexity, but I'll just say that I have shifted almost all of my search queries away from Google, which was my go-to, with the exception of navigational queries and transactional queries. Now, search breaks down into those 3 big categories: informational queries, where you're trying to find out about something; transactional queries, where you're really wanting to engage with either shopping or some other action, downloading a file, for example. I want to find this document on the web, bring it back to me. Those 2 are together, but informational queries and transactional queries are 10%. I'm sorry, total of 90%, 80% informational, 10% transactional. Informational and informational queries are really being changed by Gen AI, but the transactional queries aren't really. Right? You're still going to use Google to do those things. And there's another category which is navigational. I often use Google to say, where because Google provides a lot of local search, so all the local search is not going to be handled by Gen AI. So that leaves only 20%, the transactional and the navigational queries, as sort of protected for Google. The rest, the informational queries, are changing, and I've abandoned Google entirely for informational queries. I use OpenAI and specifically ChatGPT-4 for almost all my informational queries, with the exception of those where I want up to the minute and I want to have sources referenced. And that's perplexity. So perplexity is like replacing Google for me for any informational queries where it isn't just general knowledge that I'm searching for. If I'm looking for something specific and I want the most recent information, for example, doing a search about search and what's happening and who's writing about search, well, I would use perplexity for that. So Google's really lost a customer to a large degree for me, although I'll continue to use it. But I gotta believe that, and we're so early on that there just aren't that many people who are using generative AI. I mean, it's just
so. I'm curious, Andy, why are you doing a side by side with Perplexity and GPT now that it has internet access a little bit more reliably? Do you find that you're tempted to stay on the GPT platform even for those searches that you referenced that are outside of its?
No, that's not my experience. I have a kind of a model in my head apparently, which is if I'm looking for some broad knowledge and I want some education about something, I'm going to go to ChatGPT. If I'm looking for specific references and documentation, and that's what Perplexity provides me, I go directly to Perplexity. I don't kind of lean on ChatGPT for that.
I'm wondering, does anybody else? I guess the question is trust GPT's version, because Perplexity obviously is kind of marrying the two well, and that's why it's got a good interface and can do it. But does anybody feel like GPT's web search capabilities are good enough to be reliable?
Yeah, I think so. I've seen a massive increase in reliability, just quality of service coming out of web search. I mean, early on, and when I say early on, like a month ago, it was really bad. I would sometimes get a bunch of errors and things like that. But with this latest release, I primarily use ChatGPT as my go-to for any kind of search now. Admittedly, I had to train myself to do that,
right?
Because I was, I even catch myself still now just typing something in the address bar of my browsers, because that was such an easily learned, tool and habit. So I'm hoping to the point where I can just do that with ChatGPT.
I find the same way. I find that Google is now my last resort. It used to be my first resort. Now it's my last one. I can't get this answer from, like, just today, one of Beth, you know who it is, the guy on TikTok who's overly energetic and everything is a big deal. I forgot his name, but young guy,
Brown
here.
All of them.
Well, he was talking about this new paper that allows you to have picture of a person, and then you draw a wireframe of that person, and they dance, and they make that person dance. Anyway, and I was like, well, I want to find the paper, and so my first thought was not GPT. Okay, in that sense, like, well, I gotta Google the paper. I felt like I had to open up a window that hasn't opened in ages. It's had cobwebs on it or something. But that goes back to Andy's point, is that they're losing a lot of eyeballs. Now, we're the fringe, right? We're the exception to the rule.
Right. That's true.
Because how many people have access to I don't know, but I just feel like we're a lot of people are still considering Google their main source. But
my guess is that for searches, Gen AI has less than 10% of the share at this point.
Right.
Total guess. Total guess.
I would guess probably way less than that. Yeah, that'd be my guess.
My habit is still to search, and this is why I think that we're like ahead of the curve, but I think we're a little bit of a bellwether, because I'm not in the habit yet of going immediately to Gen AI to search. But if I search Google and I am presented with like this wall of information, and I now know that I need to click around to see what I'm looking for because I can't tailor it, right? Like I can't say in the search, find the top 10, blah, 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 and give me your rankings based on price and value, right?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
And so that occurs to me after I do the first search in Google, and I'm looking at this, oh, right. No, there's another place I want to do this because that's going to save me time. And I think that's a bellwether. I think people will be excited about that possibility happening somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think I was bringing this up right before the top of the show, right before we went live, and I was saying, and I'd be, maybe we're not the right audience for this, but some of us do have kids around the same age, and so I was just saying that for my 13-year-old daughter, Google would not naturally be her first place. That's not where she was taught, trained. She's going to probably start in something like a TikTok or Instagram to start her search criteria. Now, there's a lot to that, right? Like we have to unpack that a little bit. My daughter is not currently in a work function. She's not a business professional, which is not, not where our target audience is, obviously. It's not 13-year-old girls. But I think it's what I do think is important about this is that my daughter will be in the workforce in roughly 10 years. And that's a long time in terms of everything that might happen and will happen with AI, of course. But these are the kids that are going to quickly become the next generation of workforce. And so I'll still be, hopefully gainfully employed in 10 years. I'm not retiring in 10 years. So I'll only be 55. So, I'm like, yeah, okay. What does that mean? Does that mean that, I'll still be doing it this way, or what you guys are saying is like, where's my first thought in doing this? And as you guys were describing your process, I'm thinking, wow, I'm really still super fragmented, because the fact of the matter is, if I'm looking for something local, I go to Facebook groups because there's Facebook, because there's still a probably better chance of me finding their local page. And I want to know what the food truck is at the place down the street today. For me, I'm still going to find that faster on Facebook. Now, my daughter wouldn't even think about touching Facebook. That's not where she's going to go for that. But that's where I'm going to go. And my daughter is going to ask me to check Facebook to see where the food truck is for the place. So I'm like, that's where those kind of things are happening. Super local, hyper local type stuff that I think Google would just fall down on. When you try to type in like a Google near me, it tells me stuff that's in Tampa. Well, Tampa is 35 minutes to my south. I'm not in Tampa. It thinks I am, but I'm not. I want to know what's in this.
Yeah, I have a counter to that. I was just in Toronto yesterday, and I passed by in my Uber a restaurant. That's pretty cool. I want to see what they have to eat, right? So I Yelped it, nothing. I Apple Mapped it, nothing. And I had to eventually open up Google Maps, and it showed up on Google Maps. And I think that's because most businesses, they get on Google, which kind of ties into Google Business. So I think, to me, I obviously GPT was not even close to being where I would search for that, because I wanted to find food for around me. And it finally found it on, because it was a brand new restaurant, only 2 months old. So
yeah,
Google had it.
Google Maps is a huge search function for me. Huge.
Yeah.
But then to your guys' point, like if I'm going to go like 90% of what I research for this show, ChatGPT or some version of GPT-4. So like, I don't know, Andy, for you, you're sort of pulling that, or Claude 2 into maybe Perplexity. I'm not sure where Perplexity is. What is Perplexity? I guess let me start there. What are they built off of? What's their LLM? Is it GPT-4?
I no. It's
there's 3. So like I signed up for the Pro to hedge my bets just in case a couple of weeks ago. But you can do Perplexity, Claude, or Claude 2.1, which it is, and GPT-4. So you can pick whichever one you want.
What is Perplexity? Is that, do they have their own language model, or they built it off of another one?
I think Perplexity itself is kind of built off something else. I'm not quite sure, but I never used that. I use GPT-4.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, I want to point this out.
Yeah, go.
Well, I think like the big aha moment for me was when Black Friday came around, and we were all, I was like, oh, let me give this a shot. And I said, okay, give me the best deal for whatever we were looking for. I think a new like couch with something. And I said, give me the best deal for this specific couch in Canada. And it listed the things that I wanted. And I'm like, and then you just kind of click the source. And it was all on my phone too. And I was like, this is fantastic, because if I just did the same search phone wise on Google, there'd be tons of, there's like a lot of stuff, but this one's specifically for Canada, specifically for this. So I've been using that a lot more in terms of AI search. I think though, when this is why I was like, I'm so disappointed, sorry, but like with Google of how they could do this, because they could clear house on this because they have all the eyeballs, where this is where SGE falls so flat that, you know, when you search SGE, it's so diluted that it's not worth searching versus like a Perplexity or something. Because I think they want to straddle the fence. They want to keep their ad business, which is their 90%. But if they make search generative experience too good, then that goes away. So like, how do we make it kind of good, but not good enough that you'll still have to click to get to the source? So how it's like, for them, it's a tough balance versus a Perplexity.
I'll push back on it a little bit, just because like I actually have enjoyed the SGE experience. I was saying that at the top of the show right before you came in, Carl, that I was saying that I only really realized maybe last week that my eyeballs were staying in the SGE area of Google search way more, because I was kind of like initially looking at it, then scrolling down and finding my website. If I'm being honest, either they've gotten better or it's just because they're sort of beating me into submission of being the first thing I see. And there's that too. I mean, it is the first thing that shows up. So that's where I focus. I find that it's actually providing pretty good answers. For instance, right before the show, I just did like RAG chatbots because it was something that's coming up in our shows. And I don't have a background in like what RAG is and how that affects chatbots. So anyway, I used that. That's what was on my mind. That's what I threw in there. And the answers I was getting from it, I thought were really, really valuable. Like they gave me a couple of links, a couple places to go. The first thing it said is like, hey, do you want to go watch how to build a RAG chatbot? And it was a LinkedIn post video. It was the first thing on there. And I was like, well, see, that's super valuable to me. Like I didn't have to go search websites. It was literally trying to take what my query was and say, does this answer it? Is this a video you should go watch right now? And that will solve this problem for you. And so I found that to actually be really valuable. The other thing I'll say too is, and again, just for our audience, we're going to do a whole deep dive into Perplexity as a tool review 1 week from Friday. So we're all going to be diving into Perplexity pretty soon. Andy's obviously ahead of us. Carl, you're ahead of us maybe. But I mean, I'm definitely going to get in there and I'm going to give it my best shot. But one of the things I'm worried about is I got to go to some other website to do it. And I have right now on 2 screens, I don't know how many damn tabs are open, but it's too many in Chrome as it always is.
That's the mark of a genius, by the way, the number of tabs.
Well, good. Then I'm definitely a genius because I've got way too many open. Till Chrome tells me you're using up way too many resources, shut some of this down. But anyway, my point is it's right there. It's so easy. Like I can just put it up, type right into any URL thing on either of my screen, 30 wide on every single one of them. And I'm going to get, most likely, I'm going to start to get an SGE experience from that. And my curiosity to this is it that it's just early? Are more of this stuff going to be built into like a Chrome experience, or are people going to be willing, because of the quality of the answers and maybe the speed, because that's going to be a huge part of it, to go to a Perplexity, to go to a ChatGPT, you know, like literally inside ChatGPT, or is it going to continue to be like, is the future of search still going to be fragmented until maybe Google comes out with a Gemini or something like that? I don't even know if Gemini is actually necessarily going to involve search per se, or be the next iteration of what SG is, because that is still experimental. But I was telling my wife this just last. I know I'm fragmenting my thoughts, but I was literally talking to my wife this because she was having to put together a topic overview. They're going to fly her up to New York as a dietitian to talk on a panel about AI. Could not be more excited for my wife. But what I said to her is like, you can only do so much in December of 2023 for a thing that's going to happen in May of 2024, because what we don't know is in a flick of a switch, you may be saying, go use ChatGPT as a dietitian, and the next day, Google could come out with something like a Gemini. You could be like, never mind that. That's going to take 3 more steps for you. You're not going to do it. Just use Google. It's now pretty awesome.
Yep.
So we have a comment that is, yeah.
Yeah, so I was pushing it too. We are on the same boat, Beth. Go ahead.
We have a comment about voice and vision, that as those become worked in more, whoever is incorporating those seamlessly with good results is actually that may shift the game too. And Google has had the ability to like click the microphone and do the thing, but what Bing's iOS app and ChatGPT's iOS app have is that when you stop talking, it doesn't require you to hit submit, and that is a user interface change
Conversational, yeah.
that makes a difference.
Well, I want to jump into the other part of this comment from Seamus. It's the vision piece. And I may have mentioned this on our last show, so I apologize if I'm reiterating, but there was a use case that I think was brilliant where you take this guy was taking a picture of 2 different tires that he's considering. And he had GPT use vision to do an online sentiment analysis on these 2 products and produce an output. Now, that's a level of search that, like, Google, where are you? You should have already had this as integrated inside of yours. And now I know it doesn't have vision right now. Gemini is being built with that multimodality from the ground up.
Bard has vision, and you can search images, but it does not do what you're describing.
Right. So, but Gemini is being built from the ground up with that, as opposed to being added as a layer, which is what GPT did, right? So, I think that's, to Seamus's point, that's going to be a great. Whoever can do that well will be a market leader.
Right. So I think like that's where, so 2 things. One, I think like Brian, when you say I'm going to open all that stuff, well, in Canada, we can't. So I think that's all immediately a source of like an FU to Google. It's like, are you kidding me? North Korea, Russia, Libya, Cuba, Canada. We are in the same boat. We can't use it. So it's like, that's a big FU right
That's
away.
why you hate Google.
What can't you use, Carl? Just to be clear, what is it that you can't do with Google?
SE you can't use, Bard you can't use, any type of labs you can't use unless you have a VPN. So I have to literally open my VPN to use it. Like that's automatically like, no. Like that's gonna piss me off right away.
Wait a second, just for listeners, VPN means that you're masking where you're from. I
have to mask it that I'm in the States.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one. I think the second piece, though, from a vision perspective, that's another piece that I started doing was then I started taking pictures of like price tags, and then it's like, hey, is this a good deal? Because that whole tire thing, I'm like, oh, that's cool. So like, I took a picture of the couch. I took a picture of this. It's like, hey, is this a good deal for this? And it's like, yes, it is. But then it gave me a list of like other alternatives. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. That sounds great.
What tool is it?
I was using ChatGPT on the on the app. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that is amazing. So I think like that is a really good point in terms of like not just voice, but taking pictures of whatever, especially prices and maybe even barcodes, and then like doing that comparison shopping without having to open another app like to do that specific thing. I thought that was that was a really neat thing that I didn't now you can do.
Yep.
I also wanted to highlight Seamus's other post about the agents, and I think this is definitely 100% where this is all going, and it kind of speaks to the whole customer experience thing and the environment that people want to be working in. And Robert, you're right. It's whoever can figure out that environment that people can easily go into and stay in, that they'll definitely be the winners. It's just like I was saying earlier, I still catch myself typing into the address bar because that's so easy. Yeah. That's how we've learned how to use browsers, is just type it directly into the address bar and we'll just go to where we need to go. I've had to train myself to just try and use ChatGPT the whole time. I think the experience that you're going to get by like with the vision and voice and all those kinds of things is you're once the agents are truly built into your personal environment, all of the search stuff and all of the websites, searches, all of those features are going to be more platform agnostic. That's going to so you're going to be able to just say, hey, I want X, and your agent or whatever software you're using will acquire that. It doesn't have to be from Google. It can even, go to Yahoo search or whatever, The only real environment I still use Google is for the workspace, right? The suite, and those kinds of features. But when it comes down to search, even SGE it's, you know, it's nice if I stayed in the search environment, but I don't go to, you know, Google search to look for things. I use Google Maps to find things near me. I use, you know, Drive to handle storage and things like that. So when that time comes, I don't think we will care if it's a Google search or if it's tapping into some other source, as long as we can go to the source, right? So websites, whatever website's being updated, whatever, you know, wherever that information truly lives and is being updated, that will still be going to directly. But I don't think we need to go to the Google search page anymore. And
you know, Seamus's point about agents too might I agree. Maybe if this is what you mean, Seamus, you know, a one-stop shop sort of agent. Like I said, there's in my head, if depending on what you ask me for, I might go Google Maps, because that's a great point, Robert. Facebook still for hyperlocal, ChatGPT for deep research, Google SGE because it's right where I am, and there's options to throw it directly into an email. Like it's connected to my Gmail, and I use Gmail all the time. So like I type something in the SGE, and it's like, do you want to throw this in an email? Like, yeah, I do. That would be fantastic. So it does that. It'll throw it in a Google Doc for me, right? Super easy. It's where my workspace, kind of like what you're saying, Jimmy. But I do agree that like if there's an agent that kind of takes us and says, you know what? Whatever you're asking for, I will go to the right place and source this based on maybe my needs or what I think is the right path for that. And it's like, cool. If you're asking for hyperlocal, I already know you've got Facebook, I'm connected. I'm going to go look it up, and I'm just going to bring you back the information and source it and say, hey, I found this from such and such as, you know, ABC's food truck on Friday. Like you can go to the post if you want to. This is what I found though, you know, so I always know where the citation is. So I think that's a good point. And I think I would like to have a tool like that, which brings me back to sort of wrapping up this show, which is, okay, we've talked about maybe what's coming and what we're currently using. So like for our audience, the core business professionals, you know, what would you say? Are we at a point where people should start? I think, Jimmy, you were saying it, like make myself go try this tool. Is it, Andy, like, listen, you're kind of missing out if you're not trying a Perplexity? Should everybody be trying a tool like that just to see the type of results they get? Or is it a wait and see, hey, I think Google will probably fix this in time, so there's probably no need for me to really move right now, because chances are Google will get there, and that's what I'm using already, so what? So that's
Google
sort of my
need to
last
cannibalize
word,
Google is going to need to cannibalize this existing business model to keep up with the new norm that's happening because of GPT. So if they're either they're going to have to shift majorly and get on board this new norm that they didn't create. Like everybody's following the Google bandwagon for years, the Google search and the algorithms, everything else. The new shift is into this new GPT interface and conversational, and people are going to love that. I mean, there's millions that have never seen it before, but the ones who've seen it have already changed the way they do things. And I think that's the key that we're going to be seeing from search. It's going to be going more to the Perplexity, as we'll learn here next week. But I
want to put a term out there that's relevant to what you just said, Robert, which is keywords. So the entire Google business model is really driven off of keywords entered into the search bar. And those words can also be put in conversationally when you have a Google offered assistant. And so it just may be a transformation of the model of presenting relevant links, ads, etc., with respect to your keywords. But it could be that there's just nothing that you really want to have interrupt the delivery of the conversational information. And it's going to be a more obvious intrusion than just being over on the side with, you know, your option to go over there and click a link. So it's really disruptive. But I got to believe, I'm on the other side of Carl. I got to believe that Google has some very smart people figuring out how to tune this for themselves, because they own the traffic right now. They own it now. And that is a habituation out there in the marketplace that is very hard to displace. So yes, Brian, I encourage everybody to start using these tools, start to familiarize yourself with them. The people who are listening to this broadcast are highly motivated to do that. And at the same time, I think it's going to take a while before active assistants are in the hands of every user and displacing Google.
Nope. On that note,
I also
Anybody else before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think that for the use case that you just said, Brian, I think that as GPTs start to become more in our thing, I think I would probably put together like food truck GPT, right? So like that search function is built into something that I can just like play out. So I think that's another piece of this for the repetitive pieces of information that we want all the time. I think that will be training an agent, but that's not like some future training an agent. That's like here now. We can totally do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to look at what the next upcoming generation is gonna like you said, Brian, your daughter, my daughter, like all those kids. But then what is happening with the ones who are in university right now,
right?
And then or the ones right at finishing high school? What's their search pattern like? And we've had reports of the increase in Gen Z TikTok search first. Like, what are they using to search? And the moment they get into the workforce, they usually bring whatever they use with them, right? So it's like, how do they use? And then the leaders are gonna usually adapt to that. It's very hard to like force someone to you have to use Google. It's like, no, I got the same result with this. It doesn't matter. So it'll be interesting to see what that generation comes in and how does that impact search. And I think that's to me, that's a tough thing for Google to do, is to try to get that everyone back, because there's too many options right now. It's not GPT, it's not just AI, it's like Instagram, it's TikTok, it's wherever, Reddit, wherever you go, you can go search specifically to the thing. So it's just a whole bunch of search verticals. It isn't just one. It's like, if I want to go buy something, I go to Amazon search, Reddit.
Yeah, you guys have opened my mind about the idea of using social media for search. I didn't realize that was a thing. I think of social media as a browsing experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using it for search, and I just threw up Greg's comment on here as well. It's sort of in line with what you were just saying, Carl, he's saying this, I see them possibly providing several models, them being Google GPT model for general info, some info you want lists for websites, and for citable research perplexity like mode. And that's, you're right, Google or Apple or somebody, or, Microsoft or whatever, they're probably going to do this all in one. But yeah, Andy, I think I never really thought about it that way, but like I do that all the time. And I already use social media as a search function, just not at the level that my daughter is. And it's like, unless it's a specific narrow use case, like for her, it's just sort of the default. It's where she is. So it's where she's going to start from, versus I'm on Google, so I'm going to start from Google.
And it makes me worry a little bit, because if I think about what would surface when I would do a search on TikTok, I'm concerned about the validity or the, qualifications of those things. There's no page rank algorithm there that's saying, oh, these things are authoritative because they're connected to these authoritative sites. It's like whoever's spouting something relevant is going to come up.
I agree with you. And honestly, look though, to be fair,
man thinking, what are you talking about? Come on.
We went through all this with Wikipedia. When I was in college, they were like, do not go to Wikipedia for anything. Like, that was the way the college professors would just say it. It's like, you're an idiot if you're going to Wikipedia. These days, Wikipedia has stood the test of time, and it is so hard to get bad information. It's being updated all the time. And the way they've built that, it's a marvel, honestly, that I would have no problem, obviously, going to Wikipedia for information and then scrolling to the bottom to see the cited sources to make sure, whatever. But while I would not quote, you still can't quote a Wikipedia page. You got to go to the citation. I would do it in a heartbeat. I would assume that Wikipedia was correct. So I think we have gone through this in our generations as well, and it'll be interesting to see. But I am with you, Andy. I'd be like, my first question to my daughter would be like, "Where'd you see that?" Because that's usually my first question is like, "Where did you see that?" As she told me in the car this morning.
It's true. It's on Truth Social. I got that.
Yeah. This morning was, Dad, have you seen buff kangaroos? So that's where my daughter is at, and we'll just have to see where it focuses as she gets around and gets more focused on it.
But here's the thing.
Let's wrap this one up. Yvonne was saying, hey, Brian.
No, go ahead.
I'm
I think,
done
yeah,
joining
we
live.
by the time we finish, we got to finish. They're going to wrap the show up.
Yeah, well, no, I'm with you. We're getting it done. All right. This week we got a couple more shows coming up. Tomorrow we are going to be talking about RAG methods and chatbots. So if you're interested in that and learning more, come back tomorrow. Wednesday we're in the news. Thursday, transforming images into motion with AI, which I'm really excited about. So we'll be talking about tools like decoherence and runway ML and all sorts of fun stuff there. And then Friday, I'm going to miss this one, and I'm upset about it because I don't know a damn thing about it. But Meta's Ego Exo 4D. I don't know, Beth, you brought that one in. It looks super interesting for how VR and AR, or actually AR, will come into learning methodologies. So that's Friday. Stick around all week for some really, really great discussions. All right, you're right. We got to wrap this up. So here we go. Let me find my stuff, and we will see y'all tomorrow.
Aloha.
Happy Monday.